With You, episode 13. I'm Ryan.
And I'm Cheryl. We are two well-traveled people who want to go everywhere.
But that's not going to happen. Instead, we'll travel vicariously by inviting a guest to share their unique travel stories with us.
Today, we are talking to Brooke Murdock from the Wedding Confessionals podcast. Welcome, Brooke.
Yay! Welcome, Brooke.
Hello!
Yay!
Welcome to me!
This is so exciting because Brooke was the original inspiration for this podcast. So it's kind of a big deal that you're here with us right now.
I'm trying to remember. I think I kind of bullied you into starting this podcast. So I do this thing. I don't even remember exactly what happened, but I can tell you kind of the idea because I do this thing with every woman I talk to.
Yeah.
Anytime a woman has even a basic idea or an oh shucks, it would be kind of cool to do this, I really lean in on them and I'm like, why don't you just do it? Why don't you just stop acting like a woman who's been told they can't do something and act like what men do and just do things? They don't know what they're doing and they just do them anyway. Did I give you that angry feminist rant?
No, you didn't, actually.
I don't think so.
No, it's
that.
actually like recorded. It's a part of your episode, like on your podcast.
Yeah, I heard it.
Yeah,
I remember hearing
because
it.
what happened was, so I was on Wedding Confessionals back in May, and
Yes.
because we got connected because of my other podcast, Old Maids, and so I was on, and we were talking about travel, and you were talking about how you would travel more if you didn't have to plan it, but because your husband also doesn't really want to plan it, then you just kind of end up doing it. And then I was telling you, like, oh, if you ever just want to brainstorm travel, just give me a call. I'm always happy to talk about it. And then you were like, you know what you should do? You should start a travel podcast. And I was like, I should. And so then Ryan listened to that episode. And he and I were talking, and I was, the words were coming out of my mouth, and I was like, I do need to start a travel podcast with you, Ryan. And I realized in that moment that he and I would be really good hosts together. And so we let it kind of like simmer for a little bit to really make sure, is this a good idea? Like, you know, because all the conversations of like, we should start a podcast. It was like, okay, but it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work.
Yes, and the harsh light of day. Is this a good idea?
And so, but yeah, it's kind of morphed into what it is now, but it's so fun to have you on because like this podcast is literally your baby.
Am I going to get 10% of the profits?
Yeah.
Is there a finder's fee?
Yeah, definitely. All of the profits that we are currently making, that actually means that you owe us some money.
Oh, the investment that you made. I'm now your benefactor? Oh, no.
No, just if we're talking about how much we're making negative dollars on this. Yep. So if you want a portion of the negative dollars.
Did you guys just invite me on to shake me down?
Yeah, my Venmo is...
No, but it is true. The concept of your podcast is fantastic because there are times where I get really excited about planning a vacation and other times where just the idea of it is overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And I love the idea of getting so many tips that don't feel artificial and like somebody paid you to say that this restaurant is good. You just genuinely like this restaurant in this town. That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, in addition to you having this idea for this podcast, we actually used Wedding Confessionals as one of the examples of formats that we were interested in.
Oh, cool.
Too. Yeah, because so like at the end of every episode, we do this Wish You Were Here segment where we each like recommend a thing that's based on bridal breaks from your podcast, because we thought like it's kind of fun to have something unrelated to the rest of the content to talk about, but it's still travel related, but just like different than whatever other trip is being shared about.
You know what's funny is Bridal Breaks is inspired by the podcast Gilmore Guys, and at the end of Gilmore Guys, they always recommend something that is not their own projects that they're working on. They recommend something else. And I always thought that was, and I genuinely got great music from them, great recommendations of like TV shows to watch. And that was one of the things when I was thinking of ways of trying to get out of your little wedding head. And that came to mind. I was listening to their podcast. So basically we're all stealing from each other.
Perfect.
That's art,
That's
man.
good.
That's how
but
art
I mean,
works.
that's part of the podcast world that's really great is that everybody's super cool about it.
Yeah,
So
I mean, whatever.
we're all stealing from each other.
And the thing we're stealing is promoting other people's businesses. Like,
Yes.
that's great.
What an awesome thing.
Yeah, like, I don't think anyone's going to be mad about that.
Yeah. And you're right. It's just very genuine to be like, hey, I just enjoy this thing, so you should too. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's really tough for
Awesome.
you guys because I can constantly consume media to think up new things to suggest, but you guys have to suggest different things every time.
Yes, we do.
I mean, dude, you guys better get out in the world.
I know. Yeah. I mean, honestly, it's all just a really good excuse to travel more. So I'm cool with that.
Pretty
You know, it's like, I don't know. It's for our podcast. I guess I have to go to this cool restaurant or
Twist
something.
my arm.
That's
Oh man. Yay. Wow. I think we should get into it.
So, Brooke, we have a set of questions that we like to ask all of our guests. So, first of all, why do you travel?
You know, I was thinking about when Cheryl asked me to be on the podcast, which was funny because I don't actually travel that much. I'm kind of a workaholic. I know that sounds like sort of corny, but it's genuinely true. Like when I'm not at my job all day, I come home and work on my podcast, and my husband works really long hours. And it's just because anything I do that's a labor of love, I really enjoy. I'm just kind of a doer. So when I do want to go on vacations, when I do want to travel, I really don't like doing the go to the beach and lay down thing. Like I did that for my honeymoon and it sucked. I hated my honeymoon. Oh, it was
Really?
the
Where did you go for
worst.
your honeymoon?
I went to did I go to hold on.
Wow, this
I went
was
to
really bad
Mexico.
because you don't remember where you went.
No, I went to Mexico. I went to maybe was it
Like Cabo? or
Probably.
something
Oh,
like
it
that,
was
or like-
Cabo because I remember because I always jokingly said it like the girls from Laguna Beach. I was like, Cabo.
Oh, yeah, we're going to Cabo.
We're going to Cabo.
I call that voice my gluten-free voice. Say gluten-free in that voice. That's really
Gluten
good.
free.
Exactly. Yep.
Yes, perfect. So I went to Cabo. We found a Groupon. We went maybe 6 or 8 months after we got married. We didn't have any money. You know what I mean? And then what was bad about the Groupon is that, again, with like reading the, the fine print is, yes, all the pictures of the hotel were beautiful. There was a swim-up pool that was right in the middle and overlooked an ocean. And there was, swim-up bar in the pool. And then also these restaurants that overlooked the pool. And then the hotel was above it. It was right on the ocean. And it was just, I mean, it looked great. The Yelp reviews were good. And the Groupon was just crazy good. And, we were going on the off season, but I didn't care. Even if I didn't get in the ocean, as long as like the pool was heated and we were going to do other activities, it would be fine. Well, we show up. This is why there was a Groupon. The pool that's the center of everything, that has the swim up bar, that is all the restaurants overlook, that all of the hotel rooms overlook, and and is right next to the beach. It's under construction.
No.
There is not only no water, there is jackhammers all during the day.
No.
And the beach that's there, it's at a weird angle where the waves are like so bad that you actually cannot swim in that area. We tried to go in and I almost got injured, and they kind of the polite people walking by were like, no one swims in this part of it.
Well, you're not really supposed to swim in the beach at Cabo.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Yeah, like they're not really safe beaches.
No, and I learned by getting my butt kicked by a wave. So I mean, I spent, I'm going to say 20% of that vacation crying just because I was so sad, We didn't have a lot of money at the time, and I was really looking forward.
And you spent your money
and
on
I spent
that,
this money on this thing. We did end up doing little things around town. We went on this like dune buggy adventure that was really fun. We made up for it in other ways, but it was one of those things where I at that point wrote off from that moment on, no more discount vacations. If I go on vacation, I'm spending retail price and I'm feeling luxurious. The whole point of a vacation for me was to feel really taken care of, to feel like everything was exactly how I wanted it. Not in a snobby way, but just in a, I work hard. If I'm going to be on vacation, isn't the whole point to enjoy myself? But I only do it when I have the money and it's within my budget, because also I'm totally cheap. So I'm never going to have a vacation where I feel like the whole time I'm sweating it about how much I'm paying, because then I'm not enjoying myself.
Yeah, because if you're like, oh, I could have like had a down payment on a house with this,
yeah,
it might be hard to enjoy yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for me now, travel is not only financially just dropping the money when I have it and really enjoying it, and the whole time I'm there, not worrying about money. Once I've decided I'm going to spend X amount, I'm going to enjoy it and do it. Is that I like vacations where I can actively do things. I like we're going to talk about today. I like wine tasting because I'm outside, I'm talking to people, I'm learning something new. I like going to museums. I love traveling where I can go on walking tours and learn things. That is really the tip top for me. If any point I can leave my own world, but also bring like my nerdy brain with me and consume more stuff, perfect.
So you want to be learning. So you want to be active and also learning when you're traveling.
Yes,
then.
I want to be active and learning. And really feeling like I'm getting a sense of the city. I'm not just going to, Applebee's and the Gap.
I mean, that could be a vacation too.
I worked in the Gap in New York City and was floored by how many tourists would come in. I'm just like, guys, I know you have a Gap.
What are you doing here? Why are you spending your time here? You're in New York. Get out of the Gap.
So, it seems like you've actually already answered our second question as well, as far as what type of traveler you are. No, it's great because it sounds like you want a purpose. You're an active traveler, but you want to also be comfortable. Is that an accurate?
Yes. I will say what my favorite thing to do is I've figured it out over time of what I like to do is wherever I go, I like to have one thing planned for the day and the rest of it is just whatever. So I need to have during the day, either it is we're going to go to this museum. That means I don't know where I'm going for dinner. We don't have like a plan for what time we're getting up, but we just know I want to do this one thing today. That way there is a purpose, but there's also, it's not so regimented that you feel like you're failing. You didn't make it in time to see this.
Right.
You didn't do this. It's just one thing I want to hit and feel like, oh, I absorbed, I became stimulated, I learned something, but then also that leaves a lot of leeway for fun, interesting things to come up along the way. Maybe a tour guide who you talk to mentions a cool restaurant or, due to rain, you end up kind of pushing everything and it's fine because you only need to do this one little thing that day. And that means you spend the rest of the morning just watching Harry Potter on ABC Family in San Diego in your hotel room, which I did on my birthday 3 years ago.
All very hypothetical, right?
Very hypothetical. We watched 3 Harry Potter movies on ABC Family. You know how long that takes?
Oh, yeah, those commercials.
Yeah.
Yes. But it's one of those
and those
things.
are kind of long movies anyway.
No, but it was a rainy day in San Diego and we had the one little thing that we were able to do before it rained. And then we just decided, you know what? I do love Harry Potter. I don't have a TV in my bedroom at home, so this feels luxurious.
There you go.
There you go. Honestly, though, sometimes just being in a hotel, just enjoying being in a hotel is pretty fun, too. Right? Yeah.
I'm 5'10". My husband is 6'3", and a full-bodied 6'3". He's a large man, and I am pretty tall and big for my lady size. Well, he's not skinny. He's broad shoulders and barrel chest.
It sounds like you're describing a drink.
That's how I describe my men and my Merlot.
There you go.
Just call him your Merlot from now on.
He is. He's my Merlot. But we at home have a queen size bed. So anytime we go on vacation, I always make sure our hotel room has a king. And man, magical. Just having that space to stretch out a little bit.
Oh, man. Woo. Doing snow angels on it or something.
Yes. I love a hotel room.
Nice.
Oh, man.
One more question before we dive into your travel story. And that's, what is your number one travel tip?
I know this is going to sound corny and really broad, but I don't care. This comes from a type A who likes to get things done and wants to see things through and is like a go, 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 like I said, workaholic type. Have fun. If you're traveling, the whole point is to enjoy yourself, enjoy life. We work hard all day. The whole point of travel is to experience something new and to enjoy your life and to enjoy the human experience and experience other humans and other culture. From the moment you leave for your trip to the moment you come back, keep in mind that it's supposed to be fun. That's the one thing I learned after that dumb Cabo trip because I cried too much. I should have just gotten over it. And once I did get over it, I had a lot of fun. Once I was like, whoa, this trip is trash, whatever, and just kind of went with it. But I feel like, when you get to the airport, sometimes they're stressful. Who cares, Like, just people watch during that time. Like, sometimes you're stuck on a plane longer than you should. No, airplanes are wild. It's crazy that we can all fly in the sky. Like, try to really think of it as, it really is about your own perspective, and understand if you took the time to travel and you took the money to travel, take that moment and have the appreciation and the gratitude and actually try to effing enjoy it.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good. One thing that similar to that I kind of brought myself to eventually, I think this happened when I was in Australia. I was like, frame everything with when something goes wrong, like I got sick when I was in Australia. It's like, I'm sick, but at least I'm sick in Australia. right?
Yeah,
so cool. It's like, okay, something's going bad. Oh, I'm lost, but at least I'm lost in Venice. Or whatever the thing is, just kind of like what you're saying, reframe it. So I love that. It's a great tip. Right?
Yeah. One time I was sick in Hawaii and I was laying on the beach and I was like, how many times I've been sick, and it'd be like, do you want to lay on the beach in Hawaii? That would be like, yes, I definitely do right now. And so
yeah, that would be the one time I'd want to be laying still. If I could plan whenever I get a cold to be on a beach, then perfect.
Right? Yeah.
Also, I realized about myself, which is, again, just learning about yourself, the whole idea of like being poolside or being on a beach. I don't actually like beaches. I'm always cold.
Always cold on the beach?
Yes, it's too windy. Even on a hot one, just like, girls don't wear a lot of clothes. Like, I'm just always, even on an 85 degree, 90 degrees, if I'm just in a bikini, I'm cold. So I just realized, I'm like, you know what? Beach vacations, scratch them off the list.
So, like, clothes are for you then.
Yeah.
You want to be fully clothed while you're traveling.
Not to judge people that don't. Live your life, have your fun. It's not for me. I enjoy the clothing.
Awesome. That's a bonus tip, I think.
There you
Enjoy your clothing.
Sure.
All right. And with that, I think it's time to get into the travel adventure.
Ooh. Do you want me just to tell you? Tell me exactly what you want from me.
Just tell us all about it. Tell us. We would just love to hear about this trip you've taken, and we'll ask you questions as we have them, but share away.
Okay, so here's the thing of how I'm going to break the rules from the get-go. It's not just one trip I've taken. It's this trip that I've taken once or sometimes twice a year for the last, I'm going to say 7 or 8 years.
Oh, wow.
No, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
No, that's so great.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I am from Southern California. I live in Los Angeles. Again, the workaholic in me rarely takes time off, but I love a good 3-day weekend or long weekend or whatever I can fit in kind of vacations, because I don't feel like I'm pulled away from work too much, but I do get to reset. And this is one of the tips that I got from my friend Brittany, who loves to travel. And she said, for us city folk, we spend all of our lives in cities. So a lot of time on travel, really try to go places that are different from your other types of environment. So the thing that I love to do that is nearby is I love the Santa Ynez Valley specifically for wine tasting. When I say Santa Ynez Valley, you're probably like, what is that? Here, I'll say this. Santa Barbara.
Wait, Brooke, I have a question.
Yeah.
What is that?
Santa Barbara?
Right? Yeah.
Have you heard of Santa Barbara? Right?
Yes.
Okay, so everyone knows Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara County is much larger than the actual town of Santa Barbara. If you basically go northeast of Santa Barbara, there's this huge region that is basically just farm country. And by farm country, I mean wine. It's all just grapes.
Nice.
A wine farm.
Nice.
I think there's a name
wine
for
farms.
that.
I like wine farms.
So I go to wine farms. So wineries. When I was living in New York City before I moved to Los Angeles, I ended up being friends with my friend's older brother and his wife. They were really into wine. They just, quite frankly, weren't broke like me and had a little bit more money. They were young lawyers. It was one of those things where when I was early 20s and they were 30, and I was like, wow, I can't wait to be 30. And let me tell you, I was right. 30s rule. So
I would agree with that. Yeah,
they would always share really good wine with me, and they would talk about it. And I remember being like, I want to be a wine snob one day. Well, that came true. So living in Southern California,
magical.
no, I really did. I what a goal to achieve. What every little girl dreams of, becoming a wine snob. No, but in living in Southern California, there's this whole region, obviously into the mid-coast too, or like Sonoma, but specifically the Southern California wines that are kind of east of Santa Barbara. And there's a ton of wineries. And through wine tasting and through talking to people and, again, learning, I've just become much more educated about what it takes to grow them, what it takes and what you're looking for when you taste them. And I genuinely, like, now every day when I have, not every day, but whenever I have a glass of wine, I was like, every day I have a glass of wine. I feel like that vacation comes into play because I'm genuinely a little more educated. I'm a little more aware of what's going on. Also, if I'm in a grocery store and I'm like, oh, I've been to that winery when I see a label, it's so fun. It takes me back immediately. Just so I can kind of like paint a picture of the space. So Santa Barbara is on the coast and it's a really beautiful town. There's like a little college there and it's got their own little State Street where they have this like with all the shops and everything. And it's really beautiful. It's really rich, but it's gorgeous. But then again, you get out of Santa Barbara County closer to Santa Ynez Valley and it's just kind of quiet and rural with little pockets of towns here and there. The specific towns they have, I was looking on the map just to see, like, to jog my memory. And the towns that really kind of pop out for me are, Lompoc is really beautiful and quiet and has some wineries. Buellton is right off the highway and has some interesting stuff, and they're really kind of coming to their own now. It's kind of interesting every time I come. Buellton gets a little cooler, which is kind of weird. Like they have like a trendy restaurant that I was like, wow, like this is in magazines, and it's like they've come into their own in a way that I've never expected. They also have this restaurant that is off the highway that you'll see signs for, and it's called Pea Soup Andersen's. Pea Soup.
Oh, I've been there.
Oh, right. So
Wow.
Pea Soup.
It's kind of close to I-5, right?
There's one off of the I-5 and the other one, there's two. There's two in the whole
Okay, so I've been on the one that's near I-5.
I've been to both, girl.
Oh, yeah. It's really good soup.
Yeah, this is the one off of the 101. But yeah, the one off see, it's funny because I'm California, so I'm like the 5, whereas you say I-5.
Yep.
Which is weird because I grew up in Georgia as a kid where it's I-20. Like I know better. Like I know better to not say the 5, but I've lived here so long.
Okay, I went to school in Southern California and I picked that up when I was down
you're
there.
Like,
and
the
I'd be
101.
like, oh, it's near the 5, and then my family was like, who are you? You need to stop now.
All right. If we're going to go into this, I'm going to have to, because I have very, very strong feelings about this.
Oh, no.
No, I do.
Remember that I'm a guest.
She's a guest, Ryan. She's a guest.
You're not. In California, in Southern California, it makes sense to put the article "the" in front of whatever the thing is because you all name your freeways. They actually have names. I can't think of one right now, but they have word names other than just the number. There's a number and there's also a name.
That's true.
Right? So
yes.
it's the blah, 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 blah highway or whatever.
San Bernardino something
Sure, whatever.
highway, maybe?
So I have no issue with referring to the 5 in Southern California. However, we do not name our freeways here in Washington State, for example. So it is not the 5 here. It is I-5
It is interstate.
here.
Mm-hmm.
I will say, when I go anywhere else, it doesn't come with me.
Proud
Good
of you.
for
Yeah.
I approve
That's
of
good.
that.
That's
I approve
good.
of that.
Yeah, I don't do that.
That's
when
being
I'm
a good traveler, actually.
That's true.
I try to when in Rome.
There you go.
Yeah, no, I don't do it. I don't do it in other places. It's just, but that's how we talk here because we're, I don't know.
For sure.
We just
Yeah.
have our own little dumb dial because we're obsessed with traffic.
So near the 101.
So it's
is
near.
the-
So Pea Soup Andersen is near the 101. The other. So it's basically a restaurant. It's really. I mean, I say this in Southern California terms. Old. It's probably from the 60s, guys. Let's be real. To old. It's from the 70s. Old. But their main thing that they're known for. I mean, it's a regular kind of American fare where I'm sure you could get a burger or a terrible steak. But they're known for their. I would never. I'm sure it's on the menu. I'm not ordering. It's like when you see steak at Denny's and you're like, who orders this?
Yeah.
So
no.
right. It's like, we just get a burger. It's Denny's. It's fine. But so at Pea Soup Andersen, obviously Pea Soup is what they're known for. They also have a hotel connected to it, which I stayed at once, which we'll get into later about the reason why I'd end up at a Pea Soup Andersen hotel. But you get a discount on the soup. At least I got a little coupon. But the way that they do it is, pea soup obviously usually comes with like ham hock and all this other stuff, but it starts out, they make it vegetarian to begin with, and then you can add stuff to it. And it's crazy what they consider like the works, like the crazy stuff that they throw in there. I never do it, but my husband will do it. He'll get like the whole, the whole shebang. Like I mean, I like everything on a burger, but in pea soup, like I draw the line.
Wait. So what's the works?
Oh God! Now
like
what
are they throwing in there?
Okay, so the toppings that you can get are let's see, it is bacon bits. Okay.
All right.
Okay, I'm on board with bacon.
Sure.
Yeah. No, I'm good with
Toasted
that.
croutons.
Fine.
Green scallions.
Okay, I'm good with that.
I'm kind of dicey on that. I didn't mean to make a corny joke by saying dicey and green scallions. Didn't say dice though.
Oh gosh.
Diced ham. I feel like you already have the bacon bits. Like, calm down. And the
I would
last
just
one,
say with the bacon
you
myself.
can have bacon and ham. Just gonna say you can do that.
All right.
So
Ryan,
and
Ryan's
then the
still in with the
last
works.
one is cheddar cheese.
Ooh. We just had the same reaction. That was crazy.
It's just
I want the works
Yeah,
now.
except I want it without the peas.
That's the thing. Pea soup as a dish is kind of sad. Like it's a sad winter. It's a sad winter. We don't have a lot. It's what you do. The idea of it when I was growing up as a kid is my grandmother make a ham, and then afterwards you have the ham hock, and you use it to make some sort of a bean soup. And sometimes it was a split pea soup, and it's basically just a leftover dish you make with your leftover ham hock. But they made it into a whole restaurant. And the other thing that throws me is that I mean, the Santa Ynez Valley is mostly very hot. It is in from the coast, so it doesn't get that coastal breeze.
Point.
It's very warm.
What is that doing in Southern California then?
Why is it in Southern? I think
This should be like East
it's a
Coast
Danish
something.
thing, which we will get back to, because Andersen's is a Danish last name, and I will get to the Danish thing in a bit. But it's kind of wild. But yeah, so Pea Soup Andersen's, I've definitely had their pea soup a couple times, and it's weird to have it as like a destination cuisine, right? It's so bizarre. So that's Buellton. The other area is Los Olivos, and Los Olivos is a really tiny town, kind of in the northern end, that is maybe, I mean, I know it's a bigger like town, but their town square is maybe 3 blocks, and it's really old wooden buildings. They have cool wine tasting there. There's a couple cool restaurants, and there's a couple hotels. But again, the restaurant availability now versus 5 years ago is totally different. They have a lot more stuff. And I actually stayed at an Airbnb, which I'll get into later, in Los Olivos, and it was beautiful. But it's very quiet. And again, if you want to get out of the city, if you're living in LA or you're coming down from San Francisco and you want to have like the quietest little town, like you get to Los Olivos and you're like, I could retire here. I should look into real
that's
estate.
really cool.
Yeah, it's just really beautiful and quiet, and the people are so nice. The last place in in Santa Ynez Valley that I really have to highlight, and it'll take a minute because it's so wild, is this town called Solvang. So
okay, I've heard of Solvang.
We're in Southern California, and there is a town called Solvang. And you're like, what is going on?
Again, please?
Solvang?
Okay.
Now, every other town in LA or in Southern California, and California in general, in the Southwest, is mostly towns that have some sort of like, you get sort of a Spanish vibe to it, all the people that came and settled or whatever. You get Los Angeles, you know what I mean? You get Santa Barbara. Like, these are, we say them with our dumb California accents, but these are all Spanish names, guys. You know what I mean? Like, it's very much, you're coming from, the Spanish that settled, and then, everyone kind of just took on those names. San Diego, Los Angeles, like everything has a "san" to it. Well, it's like, hello, this is all Spanish. And then out of nowhere, you have this word Solvang, which is clearly not Spanish. It is a Danish village.
Huh.
Right.
Cute.
So knew going in the first time I showed up that it was like, oh yeah, it's kind of like this like sort of Danish place. And I was like, I wasn't really thinking when we drove through. And again, we're driving through Santa Barbara, and then you turn off of the regular highway and you go on this small road, and then you're just going through beautiful wine country and open country, and just feels so wonderful. And then you take a left into this little village, and you're like, am I in Disneyland? Why does this place? It looks like, you know, that part of Disneyland that has like the Mr. Toad's Magic Ride, like I guess it's like Fairy Tale Land or whatever, where it feels very old Englishy sort of. It feels very European, and that's what they've built this town. Like the structures look like, I mean, they're fake, but they look like the same sort of structures as if you were in a Danish village. So I was looking at, I went on Wikipedia for you guys because I knew sort of knew what this is about. So back in 1910, I guess some people from Denmark had come over in the like mid 1800s because there was some sort of famine. So they all a lot of people came over, but they sort of settled in sort of the Northeast and Midwest area. When you think about Danish people, like that's sort of where they mostly settled. But for some reason they decided to do some sort of West Coast place, and they ended up finding this land that was really cheap, and they decided we're going to make a Danish village here. And it just sort of happened in the early 1900s. And it really is, some of the people that work there are like from family that, you know, settled this place, you know, over 100 years ago. And they have, I mean, they are all about their Danish culture. Royal Copenhagen Inn. You're walking down Copenhagen Avenue, like they've recently opened up what used to be a bank. They've now taken over and made it into a shop that is all Danish goods and Danish art, and it's really beautiful. Yeah, so you do feel like for a hot second while you're there that you are sort of learning about Denmark. And I happen to randomly love the word hygge and everything that has to do with hygge, which is the Danish, the thought behind his Danish way of finding warmth and collected and connectedness within your life while everything outside is kind of awful. So the idea is get away from like, you know, like the harsh winters and come in and cozy and have like one or two friends over and have games or have coffee and warmth and fires and candles and knits. It's very cozy. It's basically cozy. We have no English word for it, but it's basically cozy. But they have a whole section that's all about hygge, and it's really interesting. But yeah, so in the middle of all this wine country is also this random Danish village. And you really do. It's so clean and beautiful and bright, and these adorable little structures that you feel like you're almost in Disneyland minus the rides and the lines. And the prices.
That's so fun. So it reminds me of up in Washington State, we have a little town called Leavenworth, and it is a little Bavarian village, and it's a very similar as far as what you're describing, as far as like they really went all out. Like even like the Starbucks there, like the sign for the Starbucks is in the same style as all those buildings and the McDonald's. So even like the chain things that are there, they've really gone for it with like staying on theme, so you kind of feel like you're in another country, which is just so fun. And so that feels very similar as far as like what you're describing.
Yeah, I had a flashback as we showed up the first time because, again, I grew up in Georgia, and there is a town called Helen, Georgia, which is a German community. And again, very German setup, and they have a huge Oktoberfest and the structures and everything. So I remember being there and being like, yo, am I in Helen? Like, what is this? But it's like, no, it's a different country. And you're like, oh, right, Danish, sorry. But again, that whole idea of feeling very...
I don't know, Europe.
But it does feel very otherworldly in the middle of nowhere when everything else is just normal America, and then there's this adorably quaint. Yeah, and again, it's definitely grown a little bit too. It's definitely bigger than Los Olivos, and what's cool about it is that on top of the cute structures and everything, it just feels adorable. And they have like shops where they literally sell, you know, danishes, like, which I guess I just call pastries. But
I guess that makes sense.
Yeah, right. Is that over time, like again, the restaurant scene has turned around. When I went there, you know, 8 or so years ago, like it was hard to find a restaurant that was decent and that wasn't kind of, because I mean, in their defense, you know, Monday through Thursday, nobody's really there. And then it's very much a vacation destination. So trying to find a business that can sustain that. And I guess over time they figured it out. But now the restaurant scene there is fantastic. Like I've had great Italian. I've had really good sort of like a butcher shop feel sort of place. They have a great Panino's is a great sandwich shop that you can have like lunch at in between like wine tasting. But the other cool thing is that a lot of the wineries that are out in the middle of like nowhere, like 20 minutes from this town, also have wine tasting winery rooms within the town. So if you wanted to do a wine tasting and didn't want to drive out too far, you can just taste right there, which is like super fun.
Oh, that's nice.
That's really fun.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
So should I'm going to give some tips about actual wine tasting for people. Is that good?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So, because I was, I guys, I made notes. I typed up.
Oh, you are type A, aren't you?
Guys, you know I did my homework. I was already on Wikipedia. So, I was thinking about it.
Do you need a gold star as well then?
Because I was thinking, even if people don't come to Santa Ynez and try that, if they're going to be wine tasting anywhere, you know what I mean? Because you can, I mean, there's wine tasting in Long Island off of New York that I've done when I lived in New York City. I've also gone a little bit of wine tasting in I know like North Carolina has a little bit, and I think like Pennsylvania. I think obviously like Washington, right? There's some wineries up here.
I'm in Eastern Washington, and there's just a ton of that out here.
Right.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's just kind of finding, you know, what you like or whatever. But I thought, because I remember the first time I went wine tasting in Long Island, and I was just such a newbie. And of course I'm with people that know what's going on, and they're like cool. And I just had to pretend like I was cool, even though inside I'm like, I am an imposter. And looking back, like I wish I had not faked it as much, because I think that actually being honest about like, this is my first time at a winery, like I don't really know that much about wine, as long as you're not rude and tacky about it and you're just inquisitive, I think that people really like the opportunity to kind of share their knowledge and to get you.
I would so agree with that.
It's kind of like you go to a museum, like no one's expecting you to know every piece of art. You can ask a question, like they're here to help. And also, it always keep in mind that when you're asking a question for that person working, like it always feels good to be like the hero or the person that knows what's going on. You know what I mean? So you're giving their ego a flourish of being like, oh, well, I'm kind of the expert and you're an idiot. And you're like, yay. Kind of feed on that. Keep in mind that people love it.
Yeah. Well, and I think the fun thing with that too, I've gone to a lot of tastings and like wine or beer or whiskey or just different things. And oftentimes the person you're talking to is the person who makes it.
Yes.
You know, and so like you're talking to them about like their baby and their craft and something that like is their passion clearly, you know. And so like just talking to someone about what they're passionate about is just the best thing in the world anyway. And so like asking genuine questions and being like, I really want to learn about this. Like, of course they want to share that with you. And so like, and I'll ask anything, you know, and I'm like, I don't care if I sound stupid. Like they're excited to talk about it. And so
it's true. Yeah. And I was thinking one of the ways that you can kind of do it and feel kind of organic is a lot of wineries, if you're going out to the actual winery to do your wine tasting, because there are certain times where you can go to what's called a tasting room, which just feels kind of like a bar that's like, you know, just full of wine.
In town.
Right. Exactly. But if you're going to a tasting room that's on the physical winery, if you look online, you can find that they have actual tours. And again, this goes back to my idea of having one thing planned for the day. There are times where if I'm going wine tasting, I'll be like, I want to make sure I'm at this one winery at this time and nothing else matters. And the reason why is they will have scheduled tours. And sometimes they'll literally put you on a truck, put you on a wagon, or drive you around, or have you walk through the fields. And they'll talk about the history of the place that they're at, whether it's, and sometimes it's usually, again, it's somebody that obviously works somewhere, but a lot of times it is either that person or their family member. So they're very intimately involved and they can tell you, oh, we planted this varietal in, you know, 1984 and we've been pulling it from here and blah, blah, blah. And they'll tell you about the sand and about the actual farming behind it. And then they usually will walk you through the area where the actual wine is made, like where the grapes go, how that's fermented, how they're bottled, how they pick their labels. And it just feels like doing that, I think at this point I probably had like 3 or 4 in different wineries or whatever, but it's really interesting because you feel, first of all, you get their sense of pride immediately, but you also get immediately a sense of, oh, that's how this is made. And you understand the art that goes into it and the thought process and all the different details, so that when you taste them, you don't just go like, oh no, it tastes like weird grape juice. You know, you understand, right? But it's like understanding someone's passion and like the history behind it and the care makes you care a little bit more while you're trying it. So I've always found, and also that's a good time to ask the questions, and you'll learn a little bit about what's the difference between red wine and white wine, and you know, how do they make a bubbly wine, you know, like how do they make a champagne, and it's just kind of an interesting way to find that out. And usually a lot of your questions are answered just in the tour, just because they basically, in every winery tour I've ever had, they basically go, this is how wine's made. That's just, that's the whole nature of the tour, is to show you their space. But in the factual walking around, you automatically are just saying, this is how it's planted, this is how it's picked, this is, you know what I mean? So you get kind of the thought process behind it, which I think is super fun. And then obviously you do a tasting afterwards and you feel a little more connected because you literally walked the space, and you know, like they mentioned, oh, remember that thing that we said, you know, that took us, you know, 4 years to make, you're going to be trying it in a couple seconds. And you're like, oh my gosh, it took these people years to make the thing that I get to try, and how fun that is.
That's so cool.
But yeah, I also think, again, like you said, being honest about what you don't know is totally fine. The other thing that I just want to throw out to people, and I know it sounds dumb, but I don't know if everyone knows, when you go to a winery and you're doing a tasting and afterwards they're like, would you like to buy anything? You don't have to buy anything. If you basically, sometimes people are intimidated by the price, or they don't really know what they're doing. Sometimes you really do love a wine, you want to buy it. But if you don't, they usually charged you from the tasting anyway. So it's not like they're going, you know, it's usually like $10.
It's not like where you get your makeup done at Sephora and then you need to like buy a thing because you got your makeup done. It's not
right,
like
because usually the tasting is like $5-8, whatever it is. But you want to put down a tip as if you were paying for a drink at a bar. It's the same thing. So throw in a couple extra dollars, because they have been serving you the whole time, because they'll be telling you about each tasting that you're doing.
Okay, so I have a question.
Yeah.
And you may be already going to be talking about this or not. I know almost nothing about wine, and I've never gone to a tasting. Are all of these winery tasting things the thing where you like sip and spit it out?
No, I was gonna get to that, because my next thing to talk about is getting drunk. Well, not really. My point is that part of wine tasting is that you will end up drinking, and then drinking and driving and alcohol and how it comes into a mix, because safety first, and also like you don't want to be white girl wasted at the end of this. So what you were saying right now in part of the tasting is that obviously, you know, after doing one tasting is basically about the equivalent of having 1 to maybe 1.25 glass of wine. Okay. So if you're out and about, if you're a smaller woman, if you haven't eaten much for breakfast yet, like you can accidentally get drunk like pretty quickly. You'll notice if you're doing a wine tour that by 3 o'clock, you're like, oh, I get why they close the wineries at 5. Because it's like, oh, everyone's been drinking since noon. And it's just not cute. It's not a cute look. So one of the things that I will recommend is that when you're, especially in the beginning when you don't really know what you're doing or whatever, like it's fine, you can taste or whatever. But if you, no one takes offense to it. You will see on the, on every bar that you're at with wine taste or whatever, there is usually a silver like container. Sometimes it has a little lid on it that's sort of like bows downward, so everything would drain into that, or it's just an open bucket. But the idea is that if you take a sip of something and it's not really for you, or you don't want to finish it because you don't want to get drunk, you just pour the rest of your tasting into that bucket. And the idea is that you don't want to get drunk. Like there are plenty of times where, you know, I'll try something. I'm like, it's not really for me. And it's like, I know I'm doing this for the rest of the day. I would not, you know, I'm trying to avoid getting completely sloshed. And no one's insulted by it. Because one, no one expects every wine to be for you. two,
Sure.
they know you're trying not to get drunk, and they're actually happy about it because they don't want drunk people in their winery.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
That's true.
So
Sure.
it's like
That's
they're
true, yeah.
completely chill. There's a reason why they put that bucket out. It's just like that bucket saves them from having to, like, I don't know, call the cops later. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? So the idea behind it doesn't insult them. You're not going to take a sip and be like, ugh, gross, and then pour it out while staring at them like a rude jerk. But what you can do is you're like, oh, this is really interesting. And then you just pour it out, or you go, would anyone else like a sip of, like, if someone else is having a different style of tasting, because sometimes when you go for a tasting, sometimes they'll do like what they call flights, which is like 5 or 6 different tastings. Sometimes they do like a white flight versus a red flight. And if you prefer red wines versus white wines, then maybe you have a preference. Or there are different price points based on the price of the wine. So if it's like your lower grade wine versus like the super high end stuff, the pricing of the wine tasting might be different. So it's just kind of, so it's just, and sometimes you like, oh, I didn't get your flight, so I'll have a taste of yours and blah, blah, blah. But at no point is it rude. I mean, I wouldn't spit it into the glass. I mean, it's a sip.
Yeah.
Just swallow the sip. But also, you don't need to house every tasting you get. Just take a sip. If you like it, great. If you don't, dump it in the bucket. No one's going to be hurt feelings about it. You already paid for it. They don't care.
That's true. I think I would never, because I'll do that instead of getting a drink somewhere. You know what I mean? So like, I would rather a lot of times do the flight if I'm somewhere new than just like one drink, because I want to try everything.
Yeah.
And so just like I want to go everywhere, So
Yeah.
I would never spit it out because I'm like, this is my drink tonight,
Yeah.
And so, but I think that's different than if you're going to like a bunch of
Right.
wineries or
Because
something
they're
like
usually,
that.
if you're going to wine tasting during the day, you may hit, I mean, let's be real. It's best to hit between 2 and 3. If you're hitting 4, you better pace yourself. It's just a lot of day
Bring
drinking.
a snack.
Yeah. And that is one part of it, is that you really do want to make sure you have a hearty breakfast. You stop for lunch. And when you stop for lunch, have some freaking water. Have water along the way. Like, yes, this is obviously alcohol and it's drinking. So you have to make sure that you're not accidentally getting, wasted, because it's like, I think it's no one's objective during, maybe it is, but it's not my objective to get, I mean, I want to enjoy my weekend. I don't get hungover the next day or not be able to go to dinner because it's like I got raging at a winery.
Yeah. Well, and also like if you are doing this to like learn new things and like fully appreciate that experience and everything, then you're totally right about that as well. Yeah.
My ideal, if you really wanted to taste and really enjoy it, is drive up the day before, get in one tasting in the early evening, like 4 or 5 o'clock before it closes, and then do 2 the next day. Because on your third winery, man, you're not tasting anything. Like your tongue's gone. Like you're just, and at that point, and that's kind of part of it, is that you might just at that point not even really be drinking, but just sort of enjoying the environment, because wineries are beautiful in the middle of nowhere, and they usually are really well cared for structures that have a lot of history, and you're kind of just enjoying the experience of just travel. And there are times where I get to wineries, I'm just like, I mean, like I'll buy a glass of wine rather than do a flight, but I won't finish it. I'm just more to just be a patron and enjoy the space. And that's completely fine. There are places that have board games like you would at some sort of bar. You know what I mean? Like it's a very laid back environment a lot of times. So again, don't feel pressure if you go somewhere if you don't want to drink. And that's another thing I was going to say, is that in wine tasting, one of the ways, obviously, to not make sure that there's like a drinking and driving problem, one way is to set a designated driver. If you have a friend that really isn't that interested and is more of a beer drinker or whatever, but really wants to see the place and wants to go on the fun vacation, great. You've earned yourself a free dinner, and all of your friends can hop in a car and you can drive around and you can enjoy the space, but then you get a free dinner. And then it's not rude, but when you drive up to the winery, you go, oh, sorry, I'm actually the DD. I'm the driver for the day. And usually when you do that, they usually have some like free something for you. You get like a free snack or a free soda or free water.
Oh,
you know what I mean? You're taken care of. Yeah. So don't feel like that's weird. It's totally not. Because again,
that's cool.
Nobody wants to have a situation where people are leaving their property and drunk driving. You know what I mean? Like these are responsible business owners at the end of the day. Like they want
it's
you to
in
be,
everybody's interest.
Yeah. You don't want that sort of reputation. So they're totally comfortable if you don't want to drink, but you just want to sort of see the space. I find it fascinating. I went with my husband loves wine tasting, as do I, but his parents came up and his dad was sort of like wanted to dabble in it, but his mother's not a drinker at all. And she just enjoyed the space because she grew up in an apple orchard and she thought it was really fun just to see farming from a different point of view. Like she grew up in Maine and getting to see southern, it's just like a completely different topography, a different type of fruit, how it's harvested. So she had great questions for them just about farming. It was really interesting. So you can enjoy it from a different perspective. But I had a great time.
That's cool.
The other way to obviously deal with, you know, wanting to go wine tasting and not have a drunk driving situation is that you can hire drivers. There's plenty of companies, any place that has wine tasting, they're usually called wine tours or whatever, but you can look it up. Usually it's not even like a fancy limo. It's usually a minivan because you usually want to go with a group of people. You know, it's usually like, you know, 4 or 5 friends that are going for a weekend or whatever. And you just all pile in a minivan. And what's great is that these people do this for a living. They know the locations. They know exactly where to take you. They usually have discount tastings at certain places because they've made deals with them. The other thing that's really cool is you can sometimes negotiate with them, or they have packages where they can do picnics for you. So let's say between tasting 1 and 2, they're like, oh, you know what? We'll drive to tasting number 2. They have a great picnic space. And then they have prepackaged, you know, plan out in advance what you're going to get. Like, I wanted the roast beef sandwich. I want the turkey. And then they just set it up for you. And then you have like basically a cute little picnic, which is great because 1, you need to eat. And 2, sometimes navigating, if you're out in the middle of nowhere, having to drive all the way back into town to go to the sandwich shop that is also trying to serve the other 100 people trying to do what you're trying to do at the exact same time, you'll waste an hour and a half trying to get lunch. Whereas if you go with these people, maybe it's a little more pricey, but it might be worth it. And again, you're usually dividing it by 4 or 5 people if you're in a van. So like it might be a little pricey, but again, DUIs are expensive and someone's life, you know, isn't really worth it. So it's like,
good point.
When you think about it and you want to price it in, just kind of throw that into the cost, that it is an added cost that you're going to have to pay. I would say, I mean, I think overall it's usually when you have like the sandwich and everything, maybe like per person about $100. It's not cheap.
Okay.
But again, you're using somebody for an entire day who's basically your chauffeur and also your caterer.
Yeah.
Kind of a deal.
Yeah, when you think about like what services they're providing with that, like it doesn't seem absurd at all. Like that seems
and it's like a tip included or whatever. But I mean, obviously you should price around or whatever. But I've never had a situation where I've done that where I haven't absolutely like loved the driver. They're usually like super fun. They're a local, like they're having a great day hanging out with you. You know what I mean? They have good tips.
So you kind of get a tour guide in that.
Kind of.
Way
Yeah,
as well,
you are
then.
getting a tour guide and they're a local.
That's cool.
Yeah, no, it's super fun. The other way that I have specifically in this region is that if you are in Solvang, if you're staying in Solvang specifically, there is a bike rental space that you can rent bikes. And there are a couple wineries that are, I mean, maybe like a mile or 2, but not that far. So you can plan it so you can hit 1 or 2 and like you're on a bike. You know, like, I mean, granted, it's still technically like a vehicle, but it's really like, and also it takes you so long to drive from winery to winery, so you're kind of hoping to sober yourself up. There's a little space in between drinking, but it's also, you get to see the countryside in a very quiet, slow way.
Fun.
Yeah. So you can
cool.
rent bikes, and that's kind of a fun way to sort of see the space. And again, there are plenty of wine tastings in Los Olivos, in Buellton, in Solvang. So again, if you feel the need, like after your first one, if you're like everyone wants to drink, then you can go there. That way, again, there's like safety. And you can have a couple of different tasting rooms within the town. So you're enjoying yourself, but no one's, you know, breaking the law or putting others in danger, which obviously we don't want to do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think Uber's out there too at this point, but you know, Uber is kind of like,
that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, you can do Uber. I know some people, the last time I was up there, I saw Uber, but again, it's not as a populated area. So you are going to wait a while for your Uber driver. But I mean, obviously like it's better than nothing.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. So what kind of drive is it like from where you live or like someone in Northern California?
Southern California, it's about, I'm going to say under 3 hours. I want to say 2.5, roughly.
It's not bad.
It all matters, again, with the 101. Traffic. It all matters what the traffic is like on the 101. Because you're basically taking that highway. It's just a very congested part of even if you're leaving the downtown Los Angeles area through like the San Fernando Valley, because then you also get into Camarillo, Oxnard. Even though it is technically the suburbs of Los Angeles or its own, its own town and own county, Ventura County, it is it's still super duper populated. So there's a ton of people. So even if you are technically out of LA, it's like you're not out of a populous area. So even when you're driving through Santa Barbara, it's like, wow, this is a lot of people. But there are breaks in between the towns where you do get this beautiful like Pacific Ocean. I remember my friend who was visiting from New York City. We decided to do that trip for just a day trip, just go up for one night and spend the night. And again, like I think he had never been to the West Coast at that point. I'm not sure, but had never really been on like the West Coast, like on the ocean or whatever. And we hopped in the car and just normal highway driving, but then it does kind of break off and you look to the left and it's just the Pacific Ocean. To the right is these huge cliffs, and he's just every time we took a turn, he would just gasp and go, "Oh my god! Oh my god!" Just blown away from the beauty, and I'm like, "Yeah, nature, huh?" And then you take it for a while in a drive, and then you turn right off of Santa Barbara onto this. I think it's the 154. It's a small road, and then it's just a windy small highway for the last about 30 minutes. Which my hot tip to you, if you're doing this, your Spotify will cut out. The Wi-Fi is terrible, so make sure you have a downloaded album. I usually listen to Fleetwood Mac. Fleetwood Mac Rumors is what I usually play because it's already downloaded on my phone.
Great. This is all part of Brooke's trip. Here we go.
They're a Southern California band. Go with it. So, if you're coming from San Francisco, I would say, if you're coming on the 5, I'm gonna guess it's about 4 hours, maybe 3.5.
Okay. So kind of in between northern and southern then. Okay. That's
more
awesome.
Southern than northern, but or central, I guess, because I guess
that's
San Francisco's Central Coast. Are they considered central?
Is it?
In
my mind,
they consider ourselves Northern California, but it is on the southern end of Northern California.
They're just trying to grab onto those redwoods, but like, let's be real, guys. I'm not just kidding.
Because when I think of southern or central, I think of like the middle part where there's like nothing.
Bakersfield,
like Bakersfield. Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Thanks so much for sharing about that, Brooke. We have we have a question based on the title of our podcast. If you could take us with you to just one thing on this trip, what would it be and why?
This one specific winery trip, where would I go?
Yeah.
Oh God, I can only pick one. Okay, let me think.
Yeah, don't mess up.
Oh, don't mess up.
No.
Don't. You know what? I know exactly what to pick. If we're talking about wine tasting, it should be about wine. Because I was thinking about restaurants or other things that are kind of kooky and weird, but I want it to be winery focused because we've talked about wine so long, and let's just dive in.
Okay.
There is Foxen 7200 or 7200.
Okay.
Foxen is a winery. They now have a nice, beautiful winery that is like looks like a normal, structure that is gorgeous. Back in the day, wineries didn't really pop up in Southern California until about the 70s.
Okay.
So the 70s and 80s is still pretty new for Southern California. So Foxen had their tasting room in the 80s, and it was called The Shack. The Shack still exists. It is very unique. It is an old blacksmith structure that they renovated into a wine tasting room.
Nice.
It's not fancy. It's off of this loud road, but it feels so like the beginning of what was Southern California winery. Because you have to realize that they were kind of rebels doing this thing that was not really respected at first. Like there was Europeans that had their wineries, and then these farmers came along and was like, oh, we kind of have the same sand and structure and temperature. We can try this out here. And everyone just trashed California wines for years. And these people came in and just stuck with it. And now like Southern California wine is seen as so classy and you know what I mean?
Totally.
Like it's seen as they battle it out with everybody else when it comes to winning awards. But back in the day, like they were really trying to struggle to make legitimacy for themselves. And when you walk into that structure, you just feel like, even though it's not that much of a history, you feel a little bit of the history of like, yeah, these guys were just trying to figure it out, and they didn't have a lot of money for wine tasting and rooms, so they were like, I guess this shack will do, and it's still around, and it's really fun. You do feel like it's a really fun place to be, and the walls are really decorated and fun stuff. Like there's a history to it. I mean, it's Southern California, so there's not much history. You got to grab on when you can.
Awesome. So Brooke, what's your next trip?
Oh my God. Okay. So I know we were talking about this, and this sort of blends into me having questions for you guys. Can we blend it into that?
Yeah.
Okay. So I originally had a trip planned to go to Seattle to visit my friend that I grew up with in Georgia, now lives in Tacoma area.
Cool.
And she just this year finally was able to make the list, and she has season tickets for the Seahawks. And I am a Rams fan because I live in LA. So the Rams are playing Seattle, and she was like, I want you to take my other ticket and go with me. And we were so excited. But then I wasn't able to come because I injured my back, so I couldn't sit on a plane or sit in the seats or whatever. So I was so bummed, but I canceled my plan. So my plan is to go in like early spring to go visit her. And now that we're not doing like the football thing, I know like she's in Tacoma, obviously, but I'm probably going to stay in the Seattle area, and she's going to visit me and sort of like hang in the hotel with me.
Okay.
But I'm trying to figure out what we're going to do in Seattle. I've been to Seattle before, so I've done the whole needle thing. I've seen the original Starbucks. I've seen them throw fish.
Got it.
Like
so
I feel like I want to do
you've
like
gone to the Space Needle. You don't. I don't think you need to do those things again.
Correct.
Although,
no, thank you.
although they did just redo the Space Needle, so actually now the observation deck is just glass. And so if like there's not the railing and the all the other stuff and stuff. So like I haven't gone since they've redone it, but
I haven't
that's
either.
something where like if you were excited about that, you know, that's the thing. I mean, okay, so I think a lot of the little neighborhoods can be really fun. Like something that I like to do in Seattle is just like go to one of my favorite neighborhoods, park my car, and then just kind of walk around between like coffee shops or like little stores or things like that. So like Capitol Hill is just a load of fun. Capitol Hill's really fun.
Capitol Hill is interesting.
Yeah. There's like
wait. You can't just drop that. What do you mean by interesting?
It's very...
You live in Seattle. I need the insider
So I don't technically live in Seattle. I live on the other side of Lake Washington from Seattle. Capitol Hill is just very eclectic, I think.
Yeah,
it just has a lot of... I mean, like, I guess Capitol Hill and Fremont, which are different, but the same in that they're very unique. Like, it's not...
both cool neighborhoods, though. Like, really fun. Ryan would never live in either one of those neighborhoods. I would.
Should I try to do Airbnbs there rather than a hotel?
Ooh, that could be fun if you stayed in one of the little neighborhoods. Yeah,
I think that could be a lot of fun.
So my favorite neighborhoods...
Queen Anne, if you're going to do
Queen
something.
Anne, Capitol Hill, and Fremont would be my three faves. I would say like Capitol Hill. There is this Starbucks like really cool. What's it called? The Roastery. Yeah. Cool Roastery. Building. First of all, pretty sure you can do a tour. But then even just they have all these really fun ways that they make coffee there. Like there's this one that I feel like Ryan, even though you're not into coffee, you need to see because it's very sciencey. Like
I've been.
What do you drink? You don't drink wine. You don't drink coffee. He's drinking water and hating life.
I'm a big fan of water.
And like there's some fun like thrift shops in Capitol Hill. Are
there cool museums nearby?
Let's see. The Seattle.
What can I learn about
the Seattle Art Museum is fun.
No. Okay, no.
MoPOP.
Here's what you need to do. So I'm going to do that for my Wish You Were Here, actually.
Okay.
But you should do the underground tour.
Yeah, you should do the underground tour.
Totally
you would love it. And Pioneer
tour.
Square is cool. Pioneer Square is the neighborhood that it starts in. But because Seattle used to be one story below where it is now. So street level.
What?
Yeah.
Yes.
What?
Because of flooding and stuff, they ended up like raising the street one story. And so all of a sudden street level became the basement.
You guys just float like ghosts? That's wild.
So here's the deal. So I didn't do the underground tour until I was an adult, and I had some friends from Europe who were in town, and we were looking for things to do. One of the other things, of course, if you're coming in like the spring, it very well could be wet while you're here.
Oh, yeah.
So there's cool
rain.
outside things, but you may want to be inside as well, depending on how you feel about rain.
Wait, if I do the underground tour while it's raining, am I going to get flooded?
No.
Am I going to die?
No.
Brooke, if that were the case, it would be flooded all of the time because it rains all of the time.
I'm trying to help people not get drunk driven, and you're over here sending me to my death in a hole in Seattle.
Oh, that's right. Sorry.
So it's completely covered, and it's I don't know. It's not necessarily warm, but it has
so
a
interesting.
lot of personality.
I'm excited by being
character.
cold because I live in LA, so this is exciting. That's the thing. I didn't want to go to Seattle in the summer because I've already done that, and also I'm hot all the time.
Sure. Yep.
So I want to go when it's like, wear a cute jacket.
Yep. Oh yeah, you can definitely wear that cute jacket. Just make sure it's waterproof and has a hood. So.
I've got these galoshes that never come out of the closet.
Oh, you will look like such a tourist. It's gonna be great.
Yeah.
Listen, when I go somewhere, I'm just gonna do it up. I'm not gonna pretend like I'm not.
Be like, where's the 405?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, underground tour is great, and then the neighborhood that's in is Pioneer Square. That's a really fun area. I would say there's just fun food everywhere too. Like there's all this different international food. So really take your pick of what country's food you want, and you can find it in Seattle, which is really fun.
How close am I to driving to Canada?
Few hours. 2 hours.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm,
I have this thing. The other trip I want to take, I think in the next year, if Netflix doesn't come through for me, is I am addicted to this show called Schitt's Creek. Do you guys know that show?
I've heard of it.
Gosh, I love that show.
So Schitt's Creek is currently on Pop TV in the US, but it's also on Netflix. I think all the seasons currently on Netflix. First of all, there's going to be a Christmas special. I don't know when this is airing for you.
Yeah.
But set your clocks. There's a Christmas special that they just announced on Twitter. But so the star of the show, the person that helped create and write it, and one of the actors on there is this guy named Dan Levy, who is Eugene Levy's son, who's like a huge
is he the one that plays the son?
Yes, Dan Levy plays the son.
He's hilarious.
So they are right. So they're actually father and son in real life.
Oh, cool.
Also,
cool.
Fun fact: Twyla, the girl that is the owner of the diner on the show, that is Eugene Levy's sister. Dan's,
really?
Sorry, Eugene Levy's daughter, Dan's sister.
Cool.
Huh.
Yeah, so both of his kids are on this show. I think there's a third kid as a producer. I don't know why I know this much, but I just like to read things. But anyway, so Dan Levy, because I follow him on Twitter, I see that he is the co-host of the Canadian Bake Off show. So it's the same people that produce the Great British Bake Off, but it's Canadian, and he's one of the funny people. Like, they have the
little hosts.
Right, like not the judge, but the funny host, and he's one of them. And I've seen clips, and I'm obsessed. And it's available nowhere in America, and there are now 2 seasons. And I have joked / been very real about making a Canadian trip. And I'll do other things, but I will plan one day of just sitting on a chair in some Airbnb and watching everything about this show. Like, just
oh my goodness.
Finally being able to watch it.
That's so fun.
I know. Right. My Airbnb guest would be like, do you have Netflix?
Yeah.
What is your
This is crucial. No, I don't want it buffering. Well, okay, so Vancouver or Victoria are both really fun up in Canada.
Okay,
so I'd
cool.
say either one is super fun places to visit if you're going up
I've
there.
always wanted to go to Vancouver since they were in the Olympics. So they hosted the Olympics.
Yes.
I remember watching that Olympics and being like, why have I never been to the city? It looks
cool.
so cool.
It's a cool city.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
for sure. Yeah.
Cool.
But Seattle stuff, I would say definitely go to Fremont. There is a local chocolate shop where you can do a tour and see how they make the chocolate. And they full on start to finish make the chocolate.
Yeah.
They don't just buy chocolate and then remelt it like some other places do. And so and then their gift shop is super generous with samples too. And
yes, it is. Yes, it is.
So it's called Theo Chocolate, and it's just so good. It's mainly dark chocolate is what they do because they don't add dairy to it either, which is really good for people who are non-dairy as well. So that's fun. The neighborhood, when you walk up to the building, a couple blocks away, you start smelling chocolate. It's
oh my
amazing.
God.
Yeah.
That
great.
works for me because my husband loves dark chocolate and he thinks that milk chocolate is for children and idiots.
I agree with your husband so much.
I like both.
Milk chocolate is just they're
chocolate.
just watering
White
down the good
chocolate's
stuff.
gross.
Don't water it down. No. But close to Theo, it's a really fun walkable area. So like there's a troll under a bridge. It's this big troll statue, so it's fun to go see the troll.
Thank you for putting the word statue in there. I was like, I'm sorry.
An actual troll. We actually have a troll.
And you have to answer a
live
series of riddles.
and there are trolls.
Yeah.
I know there were like alligators and rats living in the sewers in New York, but you guys have us beat.
There's a troll.
Yeah, we got a troll.
Yeah. And then also
cool.
Schilling Cider is really cool. They have about 30 or maybe more ciders on tap, and you can get a flight of any 6 that you want. And there's like, oh, it's so good. So that's really fun. There's really good restaurants along there. Oh, that is I love Schilling Cider. It's really good. There's really fun restaurants around Fremont too. I think there's a ice cream place. There's a really good burger place just across the street from Schilling. There's really good coffee. So I'd say Fremont. I would say just park your car in like Fremont and then just walk around and go do those things.
I was gonna say, can I, when I travel here and I get my potential Airbnb or hotel, can I just Uber everywhere, or do I need to like rent a car?
Yeah,
you could Uber.
Okay.
There's actually, depending on where in Seattle you are,
or like,
the buses
is there
are actually pretty good in Seattle.
I was gonna say I'm fine with public transportation.
Cool.
So if I'm in Seattle itself, buses are chill.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I love a good bus.
And Google Maps knows all the bus routes too, so you can even just put into Google Maps like where you're going, and it will tell you what bus to get on and how often it comes and all that stuff. So
that's cool. And again, I'm totally fine of walking on a bus and being like, I've never been on this bus before. You got to tell me when to get off, and then I just sit right behind them and I like stick my little head out. Like, I am not getting lost.
Well,
like,
it's good
I
too,
don't have pride when it comes to public transportation.
Google Maps will even tell you how many stops you need to go. It'll be like,
God,
go
where
9
was that
stops.
when I was living in New York City?
Like,
Just lost as anything.
Queen Anne is a really cute little neighborhood too. Cary Park, you get that classic view of the city where like everybody
Is that
takes
the Full
their picture.
House? No, that's San Francisco. I'm like,
Francisco.
who's got the Full House houses?
So you can go to Cary Park and get that picture, like overlooking. There's a city in the water, and like the ferries going by and everything. If you want to make your way out to West Seattle, Alki Beach is really fun. Let's see. I'm trying to think about Gasworks Park. Yeah, that's really close to Fremont as well. I have walked it, but I would say depends on how much you like to walk between like the main area of Fremont and Gasworks. But
after all that cider,
have you seen 10 Things I Hate About You?
Yes.
Okay, where they do that like paint fight scene with the big, like they use the little like paddle boats up to go up to this park with these big rolling hills and then all these like old machinery things. That's Gasworks Park. They don't do that paint thing there. That's never existed other than for that movie. But
wait, that wasn't a documentary?
I mean, it was.
It felt like it was just a documentary of my life. Speaking of documentary, can I still go to the place where the real world Seattle was shot?
Oh boy!
Please tell me that's an Airbnb now, because then you can just stay there. So
right?
But if you are going to be in Tacoma, where your friend is at all, the Tacoma Glass Museum is really cool. You can watch glass blowing there, and that's just like super neat. It's not huge, like they don't have a ton of exhibits, but then there's some bridges close by to it where like really there's this really cool overhang on the bridge. It's just filled with Chihuly pieces and like gorgeous. And so and Tacoma's kind of a fun little area too. Like I would maybe say like spend a little bit of time down there, and your friend can kind of show you where she likes and stuff. I'm definitely going to go to
Tacoma because she recently bought a house, so I know I'm going to go and visit and see the place.
But yeah, the Glass Museum.
I won't be a house guest, as we've discussed. I don't like being house guests.
Well, but then also, if you really want to talk about 10 Things I Hate About You, the school is Stadium High School, which is also in Tacoma.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
cool.
like that looks, I mean, and it actually is a real school that looks ridiculous like that. And so it looks really cool.
You could swing by Stadium High School. Yeah. Yeah.
Right on. That's cool. Guys, I am set.
Lots of things to do.
Love it.
Yeah.
Love it. All right.
Cool.
but we should probably get to our Wish You Were Here's.
Yes.
Where each of us is going to highlight a different travel attraction somewhere that exists. I think we're going to do things in the U.S. today, since we're being more local-ish. So, Cheryl, do you want to start?
Yeah, is this local or...
Be quiet.
Okay, so my Wish You Were Here is not in the continental United States, but it is in the U.S. It's in Hawaii, on Maui, and it is the Hyatt Regency Hotel in Maui because they have penguins there.
What?
Okay, so I think Facebook just told me it was 8 years ago that I was there, but so I was in Maui, and I was with my parents, and we're just looking up random things to do and stuff, and my mom had a book, like a physical travel book, and she was like, oh, there's penguins at this hotel, and I was like, excuse me, what? Because I'm the biggest penguin fan ever, and so I was like, we need to go see the penguins, can we go please? And then we learned that they also have brunch there, and so the brunch there is like,
you mean it sound like the penguins have brunch? Like, really?
Oh, I would pay so much money to have brunch with penguins.
Oh my God, that'd be amazing.
But okay, so this is one of the best brunches I've ever had, and it's in the restaurant that it's in is like in the place where normally there would just be a wall. It's just open. In so it's like a 3-sided room, and then the fourth is just open, and it's this pond with like a waterfall and swans and birds and like palm trees, and so it's just like the most gorgeous room, and it's a buffet, and it's a really good brunch buffet. And then in the lobby of this hotel, there's just penguins chilling. I mean, they have their little, it's like a zoo exhibit essentially, but like I was like 1 foot from a penguin, just like waving at him, and he was very cute, and he did look at me. And so so I had a really good brunch in a gorgeous location, and then got to like look at some penguins. So like we didn't stay there, like, but you can just go and be in, I mean, even if you don't want the brunch, just go to the lobby and go hang out with some penguins. So yeah, that's my Wish You Were Here.
That's amazing.
Wow. All right. Brooke, what about you?
Mine is also in the continental U.S. On the I guess not continental because you were in Hawaii, but I'm on the other side of the country. So when I lived in New York City, I was always kind of desperate to try to get outside of the city living sort of feel. Like you go to Central Park, you go to other areas just to kind of feel like you were in nature. Mm-hmm. And I loved the museums there. They're beautiful. But there is a portion of the Met that is not actually in Midtown or like the Upper East Side or whatever where the Met is. There's a section called the Cloisters, which is in not even like when I say like the northern part of Manhattan, I mean like all the way at the top in Washington Heights. And by the time you get up there, it's in this park that's called Fort Tryon Park, and you feel like you're not even in Manhattan. You're still on the island, technically. But it's not like, because when you're in Central Park, you can still see the buildings around you. You can still hear traffic. You know what I mean? The city's in you. You can feel it. But with the Cloisters and this park, it is just so remote and quiet. It takes a while to get there because it is, past the 200s, like it's really far up and high up in the city. But I think what I did was I took like the train for a bit, and then it ends and they have to get out and take a bus. But it was beautiful. So the Cloisters are what they did was they took different structures from Europe that were, either I think they're mostly part of churches and actual cloisters. So this usually has to do with monks. And they would take the structures apart and then rebuild them in New York.
Really?
So that's actually not one building. I looked it up. It's actually 4 different buildings that they built to put this thing together. And as you walk through, they'll tell you like what part you're in and where it came from in Europe. It's really beautiful. And within the structure itself is its own work of art. You know what I mean? It's architecture from around the world. But within it, they have all of these really old, obviously it's pulling from the medieval times, but trying to find really old European art. And one of the big things that they're known for is that they have the unicorn tapestries, which I think
don't know what that means.
Of them.
Unicorn tapestries?
Yes.
Made by unicorns? There's unicorns on the tapestries?
Made from unicorns?
Yeah,
what are we talking here?
So the unicorn in captivity is what it's called. Hold on. So the Hunt for the Unicorn, I think, is the series of them. I'm going to look it up real quick to give you the exact thing. Hold, please. And the thing is, if you Google unicorn tapestry, you're going to go, oh, it's a pretty famous looking old. Are you looking at it?
I'm
You're
Googling
doing it right now. Okay. I'm waiting for it. They're from the Middle Ages.
So the style looks very familiar to me, but I don't know if I've seen images
of this specific thing of the unicorn in captivity. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So it's from the late 1400s, early 1500s, but it's a tapestry, which is kind of amazing that it's survived that long. Because you think obviously structures that are made of, some sort of stone or bronze, they're going to be able to make it, but cloth, over time doesn't.
Yeah.
And they have a lot of these that they were able to save, and they're all hanging in a row. And they're just so big and beautiful. And
how big are you talking?
I think we're talking I'm going to look up the dimensions of it. Okay. Let's see. Time. Oh, put in dimensions. Let's see what it says. They vary in size. Well, that's not very helpful. Oh, they're about... they're usually 10 feet. 10 feet tall. They're huge.
My goodness.
They're massive.
That's so cool. Wow.
And they're very beautiful and intricate. And again, it's unicorn, so it feels magical. But the whole time you're in this space, you feel like you're in some period piece. You feel like you're in some Robin Hood movie. It's just, and again, it's you're in Manhattan. And the whole time you're there, you're am I on a European vacation? And it's so quiet. Cool. And there's this beautiful courtyard in the middle that's very pretty. And again, the park around it is the way the topography of Manhattan works is that part is really high. So you're kind of lifted up anyway. It's just really, again, if you're in the East Coast and you're visiting New York City and you kind of want to see something that doesn't feel like New York City out of nowhere, it's definitely worth the, hour to get there from Midtown. Yeah, it's really beautiful, and it's very soothing and very zen. When you're there, you're oh.
Well, that's probably perfect when you're living in New York too.
Yes,
so, yeah.
Yes, you're always trying to find ways to bring your heart rate down.
Yeah. So I went to New York a year ago, and I looked up all these different lists of okay, what should I do? Where should I go and stuff? And I kept seeing that pop up, and I didn't end up making it out there just because of it's a time
investment.
proximity. Yeah. And also I live in the mountains, so I was give me the city, I need it. So,
yeah, totally. Yeah.
But I kept seeing that on the list, and I was what are these things? And I didn't quite understand what it was. So that's super cool to hear about that. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, I highly recommend the cloisters.
Nice.
That's
Ryan?
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So mine is, it's in Seattle. So Brooke, when you come on up here, you could go here as well. It's called...
Add it to my list.
Yeah. They recently renamed it, I think within the last year or so. But it's called MoPOP, so the Museum of Popular Culture. The building is ugly. I do not like it from the outside. I think
Wait, is it a new structure?
I mean,
or do they redo it?
You might have seen it. When did you go to Seattle?
No, I went to Seattle at this point 5 or 6 years ago.
No, but then you've seen it because it's at the base of the Space Needle, because it was built 2004, 2003, something like that. It looks like a melted guitar. It was called the EMP at the time.
Okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so it started as it was called the Experience Music Project, EMP, like Cheryl said. And it was, supposedly modeled after a smashed Jimi Hendrix guitar or something. And
or
it was
a child drew it, one of the two,
something like that. I don't like it. It's ugly.
Yeah.
But they actually have, and so if you're totally into music, right? So like they have a whole thing about Pearl Jam and Nirvana, because Nirvana's been, was based in Seattle. So they got lots of like music-y things. That's not really my thing. But if that's your thing, go for it. But what they do have that I do love is they have a science fiction museum and a fantasy museum, which is really cool. And they're both done really, really well. And so like the science fiction museum has a whole, they just have lots of different like props and artifacts and things from all sorts of different movies and TV shows. And they kind of, if I remember right, they have like a timeline of like science fiction. So even like from like books and novels and things, and just kind of look at the history and how things have changed over time in science fiction, which is really cool. And then the fantasy part is it's a separate little spot. I actually think is really, really well done because it's like you're in a forest. They make it so that you're like walking around and you're in, it's obviously you're not in a forest, but it's made to look like it. And like the walls kind of have like the texture of like trees in some places.
Cool.
And they've got, have you not been there, Cheryl?
Well, no. Okay. I've been there and I've been to the science fiction museum, but is the fantasy part newer? Cause I don't think
it's newer. Yes.
Okay. I've only been to the sci-fi part. Yeah. And I like the sci-fi museum part of it a lot. And I also like the music part. And so, yeah.
Yeah. No, the fantasy one I think might be my favorite. It's small, so it doesn't have a ton of stuff, but they have things like they have stuff from The Wizard of Oz and like costumes from The Wizard of Oz. And they have like the swords from The Princess Bride. And they, one of my favorite things is they've got, well, it's moved around a little bit, but I think they have this glass case and they have the invisibility cloak from Harry Potter on display.
Nice.
So like I just like that just gives you an idea just kind of like the character
that just,
of
like,
this museum.
Warms my heart so much. Oh my gosh. Okay. So nerds made it then.
Oh yeah. Oh definitely. Definitely. I mean, come on.
Nerds.
Seattle is like a nerd like haven.
It is.
So
it is.
It totally is. And they've got lots. I mean, I'm looking at their website right now. It looks like they either right now or soon are going to have a Marvel exhibition.
Cool.
I guess. So like there's just lots of really cool things. It's not cheap, but it's super, super fun. And I would definitely recommend if you're coming to Seattle and you have the time and are interested in any of those things like music or sci-fi or fantasy, or they actually have a horror museum as well. I don't like horror, so I'm not interested in that, but they also have that. Like they just do a really good job there at the MoPOP. So that would be my
MoPOP.
Yeah.
It's fun to say.
It is fun to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, Brooke, if you were going there, it's walkable between there and like Lower Queen Anne. Queen Anne is a hill. There's a lot of hills in Seattle. So like, but there's fun like restaurants in Lower Queen Anne, or even like you could walk Queen Anne Hill if you wanted to, And so, like it's not too far from that neighborhood, which is kind of fun. So yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Right on. That sounds like fun.
Yay! Yeah. Well, Brooke, plug your podcast. Tell our listeners all about it.
It's about wine. No, it should be. Well, we do drink wine during it. My podcast is called The Wedding Confessional Podcast, or Wedding Confessionals. It is a podcast that me and my co-host Pam started about a year and a half ago, when we realized that even the sanest of brides go insane while planning their wedding. And we wanted to have an open space to kind of be able to share your thoughts, but in an anonymous way, so you're not accidentally hurting your bridesmaids or your mother-in-law while you're trying to plan your wedding. So the first half of the podcast, we have a guest on and they talk about their own personal history with weddings, whether they've gotten married or they've been to a wedding, whatever it is, they just kind of chat about it. And then the second half, listeners have submitted anonymous confessionals, and sometimes they're rants, sometimes they're questions, sometimes they're funny stories from the past. And we read 3 confessionals and we will give advice when necessary. And I just love talking about weddings, and I do it for at least an hour every week.
Do you grant forgiveness as well?
Oh, yes, completely. All is forgiven in love and war and wedding planning.
I'm so sad that this is an audio medium because our listeners just missed Ryan. What is it called when you? I don't even know the term for like he crossed
the sign
himself.
of the sign of the cross.
He like did the Catholic crossing.
That's the sign of the cross.
Thing.
Yeah, exactly.
And he did it with like a lot of like sternness. Like not only has he done it before, but he was in charge
you need
of
to
this
take
moment.
those things seriously. So yeah.
I like it.
I will say Wedding Confessionals is one of my favorite podcasts. It's one of those. Yay! I have a handful of podcasts. The second they come out, I am listening to them, and this is definitely one of them. And so I am a huge fan. It's so fun, and you have on really good guests too. And so just like
thank you.
Yeah. Love it so much. You guys should definitely check it out.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, we have a good time. We like talking about weddings. So yes, if you're getting married or you know somebody who's getting married, please tell them about the podcast because it's genuinely helpful. If for nothing else, it's just kind of a way to like feel like you can vent.
Yeah.
And just sort of feels like you're not alone if you feel like the wedding process isn't just, sunshine and roses. You're not alone. It doesn't make you a bad person if you find yourself a little stressed out.
Yeah, you guys get such interesting stories on it. Oh my gosh.
No.
There are so many situations where I'm like, are these humans that like exist and are doing these things? And so it's so interesting. I love it.
And the good thing is, I don't know when this will air, but our latest episode, I want to say episode 84, if you're listening to this later on, we do an entire episode, which is people, after they've sent in their confessionals and we give them advice, it's people following up about what happened.
Ooh.
Yeah. It was such a good episode.
Now it keeps getting further in. Like we're really, like it's like on top of, and then someone's going to email back again after they like really get married. But it's really fun, like how we're seeing sort of a continuation of seeing the aftermath of me giving random advice and hoping it works.
I love it. Yeah. Well, and what was really fun about that episode is that you guys hadn't read what the people had said, so you were genuinely like, wait, hold on, was our advice good or like
right, because when they write in, they say, hey, I'm writing back about this, and then Pam just hit the star to remind her to save it, and then we just printed out like a couple. We weren't even sure how many we would get to in an episode. We ended up getting to like 4, but the whole time I'm reading this, I genuinely had no idea.
Oh wow.
I don't read the confessionals before we start the show anyway. I mean, I do homework with everything else, but not that show.
But also I think that's good because then your reactions are so much more genuine, so I think that's really fun. So,
I found that in the beginning when I didn't do that and I would read them, I'd overthink it, and I thought I was like, no, I just need to read it and like go with my gut.
Yeah. I think you're right. Yeah.
But definitely if you're planning a wedding, it is the show.
On my episode on your podcast, we talk about drunk pasta a lot. So, that's
oh my God, you made pasta with wine.
I will be down in Southern California late March, and I will come and make you drunk pasta. So,
is that when Beth's getting married?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, right on. See, I know she's been on the show a couple times talking about her wedding.
So, Brooke, if people wanted to follow you on the socials, how would they do that, or the podcast, whichever you would prefer?
Honestly, here's the problem. When you have a show like Wedding Confessionals that's so long, you cannot have the same like handle for everything. It's super annoying.
Yeah, we hit
so
that
the best way to connect with us is just to go to weddingconfessionals.com. Okay. I know we're most active on Instagram, which I know we're at Wedding Confessionals. So if you want to go to Instagram, or if you find us on every podcast provider, we're everywhere. But weddingconfessionals.com is kind of our hub that gives you all the information about the shows, information about us, links to all of our social media. That's our spot.
Great.
Love
Wonderful.
Thanks, guys. This has been so much fun. Yeah. Now I can't wait to go to Seattle. I'm so excited.
Wonderful. And then if you wanted to follow our podcast, you could do that at TMWI Podcast. So TMWI for Take Me With You Podcast. We're on, I think, most of the major socials with that, I believe.
Yeah, we are. You can also email us at timwepodcast@gmail.com and send us questions, stories. We want to hear all about your travels or future travels or guests we should have on. So send us an email.
Yeah, or if you would like to actually be featured on our podcast, you could call us and leave us a voicemail with your question.
Fancy.
Yeah, aren't we though? You could call us at 406 Pod Timwe, which is 406-763-8699. And then on whatever things you happen to be listening to us, if you would be so kind as to rate and review us, that would be great, because that'll help more people be able to hear the awesome stories from guests like Brooke.
Yeah.
I heartily agree with that idea. Do it. I'm not much for peer pressure, but do it.
Guest pressure. It's good.
It works. Yeah. We'll take it.
And as always, thank you to Beth Morrell for her awesome artwork. You can check out more of her artwork at Beth Is Something.
Thanks, Beth.
Yeah.
Beth is awesome.
Yes, she is. That's going to do it for this episode. So until next time, remember to take me with you.
Take me with you.